Have you ever watched someone the world couldn't stop talking about and realized no one ever really knew them? Pamela Anderson was once the most photographed woman on the planet, but behind the glamour was a story of pain, loss, and quiet strength. At 58, she's finally telling the truth, and it's more heartbreaking than anyone imagined. You know, when people hear the name Pamela Anderson, most picture the red swimsuit, the slow-motion beach runs, and the wild headlines that followed her every move. But behind that image, behind the glossy magazine covers and flashing cameras, was a small-town girl from British Columbia who never asked for the chaos that came with fame. She was just a shy, hopeful young woman who wanted to make something of herself. And in a way, she did. Just not in the way she ever imagined. Pamela's rise to fame was like a rocket. One moment, she was a face in the crowd at a football game, and the next, she was on every magazine cover in the world. Playboy called, Hollywood followed, and soon she became the fantasy figure of the 1990s. But while the world was celebrating her beauty, it was also quietly tearing her apart. Every move she made, every mistake, every heartbreak, became public property. Then came the people who shaped her story. Tommy Lee, the rock star love of her life, and the man who brought both passion and pain. Her two sons, Brandon and Dylan, who became her greatest reasons to keep fighting. And the media, oh, the media, who turned her private moments into public scandal. The tabloids couldn't get enough, and Pamela quickly became more of a headline than a human being. You see, the real tragedy of Pamela Anderson isn't that she was famous. It's that she was never allowed to just be. The same culture that crowned her a goddess stripped her of her humanity. In the 90s, the male gaze ruled everything, and Pamela became its ultimate creation and its greatest victim. She was adored, but not respected, desired, but not understood. And here's the painful truth. Her story isn't unique. We saw it again with Britney Spears, with Meghan Markle, with every woman the media built up only to tear down. But with Pamela, the spotlight was harsher, the cameras closer, and the judgment never-ending. She tried to rewrite her story, to speak, to write, to fight back. She became an activist, an author, an advocate for animal rights. But the world didn't want that Pamela. It wanted the fantasy. And no matter how hard she tried, the shadow of who the world thought she was always followed her. By the time she reached her 50s, the illusion had cracked, and what was left was a woman trying to find herself again, after decades of being defined by everyone else. It's a story that's more than just tragic. It's hauntingly human. Because beneath the makeup, the fame, and the scandals, Pamela Anderson was simply someone looking for love, belonging, and peace in a world that refused to let her have any of it. You ever wonder how one random moment can change your entire life? For Pamela Anderson, it all started in 1989, just another day at a football game. The camera panned across the crowd, caught her face, and the stadium erupted. Within days, she was whisked into a world she never imagined. Photo shoots, fame, and an offer from Playboy that would make her a global name. In the blink of an eye, the girl from small-town British Columbia was suddenly the world's most recognized blonde. The 1990s were Pamela's decade. Baywatch turned her into an international sensation, a lifeguard in slow motion who defined beauty for a generation. But fame came with a heavy price tag. When the private tape she made with Tommy Lee was stolen and leaked, it didn't just invade her privacy, it shattered her trust in the world. The media turned her humiliation into entertainment. Strangers made jokes, tabloids cashed in, and few stopped to think about the woman behind the scandal. By the 2000s, the glow of fame had dimmed. Her marriages came and went. Legal battles, health scares, and endless public scrutiny wore her down. The industry that once celebrated her now treated her like a punchline. She wasn't a headline anymore. She was a cautionary tale. The dream that started on that sunny day in 1989 had turned into a nightmare she couldn't wake from. But Pamela was never one to disappear quietly. The 2010s marked a new chapter, one not written by Hollywood, but by her own hand. She turned to activism, fighting for animal rights and veganism, lending her voice to causes that mattered. For the first time in years, she wasn't performing for the cameras. She was speaking from the heart. Then came the 2020s. At 58, Pamela released her memoir and a documentary that peeled away the glitter and revealed the woman beneath it all. No makeup, no pretense, just honesty. She talked about love, loss, and how fame had both given her everything and taken everything away. And maybe for the first time, she seemed at peace. Now she's back in British Columbia, living quietly by the sea, far from the chaos of Hollywood, far from the flashbulbs and whispers. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The same place where her story began has become the place where she's finally found peace. Looking at her life, you can't help but think about how different fame feels today. Back then, paparazzi chased you down streets. Now, celebrities chase their own fame online. But the hunger, the intrusion, it's all the same. Pamela's story is a reminder that being seen by the whole world can sometimes make you invisible to yourself. And maybe that's the real tragedy. That the woman everyone thought they knew was never truly seen at all. You know, the hardest thing about Pamela Anderson's story isn't what happened to her. It's why it happened. She wasn't destroyed by fame alone, but by how the world chose to see her. Society punished her for being beautiful, confident, and open. The very traits that made her famous were the ones people later used to tear her apart. For years, her image, her body, her smile, her name belonged to everyone but her. Tabloids turned her into an object, a symbol, a punchline. And somewhere in that chaos, Pamela the person got lost. She once said she felt like she was living a life written by other people. Imagine that. Everyone thinking they know your story, but no one ever asking how you feel inside it. And the emotional toll, it's something you can hear in her voice now. Failed relationships left scars that fame couldn't hide. Trust became a luxury she couldn't afford. The spotlight that once adored her grew cold, and the silence afterward was deafening. Fame without peace. That's not success. That's a slow kind of tragedy. But here's the thing. Pamela never stopped fighting to find herself again. Instead of chasing relevance, she walked away from it. She went home, back to British Columbia, surrounded by trees, the ocean, and quiet. She started writing, reflecting, and living without needing anyone's approval. Her memoir and documentary weren't comebacks, they were closure. She learned to see herself not through the lens of a camera, but through the mirror of truth. No filters, no performance, just Pamela. She embraced the lines on her face, the stillness of solitude, and the beauty of a life lived honestly. And in doing so, she reminded all of us of something powerful. Peace doesn't come from being adored. It comes from being understood. So, if her story hurts, it's because it reflects something we've all felt. Being judged, misunderstood, or reduced to one version of ourselves. But Pamela's story doesn't end in tragedy. It ends in freedom. She's proof that you don't have to be perfect to heal. You just have to be real. And maybe, in the end, that's what makes her more beautiful than ever. In the end, Pamela's greatest act wasn't her fame. It was her forgiveness. She turned pain into peace and silence into strength. If her journey moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Because stories like hers remind us that even in heartbreak, there's always hope for healing.